House Republicans are nearing completion for the tax policies for their sweeping mega bill, but final details hinge on spending cuts from the Energy and Commerce and Agriculture committees. The Ag Committee, tasked with overhauling food stamps, may delay its markup until mid-May. Ways and Means has authority to propose $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, contingent on $2 trillion in spending cuts elsewhere. Internal debates continue over Medicaid changes and boosting the state and local tax deductions. GOP leaders await President Trump's final approval with concerns that a late-stage objection could derail the legislation's broader border, energy, and defense components. We're now joined by Congressman Josh Brecheen. And my question to you, Congressman, is at this stage in the conversation and the debate over this bill, where are we, and what do you see surviving after the dust settles?
Well, I want to thank the Speaker. You know, it was about a week and a half ago, he stood before the cameras along with Senator Thune and made it very plain that the House resolution that we sent over in terms of what the House position was with the blueprint, that would be maintained at the $1.5 trillion floor. And then, as you rightly point out, as we, as ENC, or Ways and Means rather, does more in implementing the things that President Trump has talked about doing, certain tax provisions, changes, not just extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that there would be additional savings that would be found through these other committees. I'm on Homeland Security Committee. I just walked out of the markup. You know, all of this is going to be around the premise of, yes, we're going to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but we've got some things that we're going to have to invest in. Relative to the chaos at the border, the Homeland Security Committee is right now marking up a measure that would ensure that there are 700 miles of physical barriers.
Congressman, I think that most of us would agree that the landscape in which Congress is talking about tax cuts and talking about trimming has never really happened with the shadow of DOGE over it. And I say shadow in a good way. DOGE has really exposed how government has misspent taxpayer dollars. How has DOGE affected the way that you and your colleagues talk about wasteful spending, how you talk about these kinds of bills? Has it been easier or harder for you?
Well, my hope is it's injected more courage, a spinal transplant, if you may, among members. And I ran under the premise of seeing the chasm between our revenue and our outlays, the annual deficits that have led us to this $36 trillion debt. I actually got elected talking about going to Washington, D.C. to reform spending. But I had someone who paved a way in the 2nd Congressional District of Oklahoma. I worked for and represent the same constituency as former U.S. Senator, former Congressman Tom Coburn. So this message, Oklahomans have been hearing someone talk about this problem for 20 and 30 years. That's not the case across the country, right? So many members of Congress run under promising more government spending, the free candy. And so I understand that there's a lot of constituencies that are going to have to understand, connect the dots between the 20% devaluation of their currency, because a basket of goods costing that much more compared to January of 2020, and that as we monetize our debt, as we spend beyond our means, and we continue to downplay our currency, what that's doing, driving inflation. And as I would tell my constituency and hope the American people are fully understanding this, and DOGE is talking about this, thanks to the leadership of Elon, is this excess spending is inflationary. And every time we're spending beyond our means, we're either taxing ourselves directly or indirectly through that hidden tax of inflation.
Well, you say that you ran on this premise, and my question to you then is, what surprised you once you got into office as someone who was on the outside saying, hey, this is a problem, our spending needs to be investigated? What surprised you once you got behind the scenes and you were able to actually see how it worked? Were there as many disparities between kind of the reality of what people want and how it actually works?
Yeah, look, waste has a constituency, right? Somebody's ox is going to get gored when you talk about cutting spending, but the responsible lawmaker is the one who is for the benefit of the many. And if we can tackle the discretionary spending, mandatory spending, all this chasm, this deficit spending that's driving inflation, the most effectual lawmaker is not the one who's going to be bringing home the most back to their congressional district. The most effectual lawmaker is the one who's stabilizing the dollar within the wallet of the families they represent. And what DOGE, what X, what this grassroots movement is doing is people are becoming informed. So many years, everybody, I've gone from public life back into public life, and when I'm running my little dirt works business in Oklahoma, it's all I could do to just function throughout the day, make sure my customers were happy, and then come home and spend time with the family. Most people don't have time to dive in and understand the intricacies of our debt and deficit spending, and a well-informed citizenry is dependent upon communication coming from their members of Congress, and DOGE is creating that opportunity now, not just for the Oklahoma 2nd Congressional District, but everyone is having to have a hard conversation. I'm grateful for a president who has kept, and I've said this to him in my time at the White House, I'm grateful to him for keeping his foot on the gas, because we are headed towards a sovereign debt crisis somewhere in the future, or hyperinflation. And my hope is we will do the hard things now to bless posterity.
Well, there are concerns that President Trump may have some last-minute objections about this bill regarding Medicaid reforms. Where do you think we stand there?
Well, my hope is that people understand. I'm talking again, politics is usually downstream of culture, and this is part of the information gathering. People need to understand where Medicaid has transitioned from its inception in 1965 under the Lyndon B. Johnson administration. Originally intended for the blind, the aged, the disabled, the pregnant, nursing mother, and the impoverished. What we find now is, if you look at a Paragon graph, it shows you that now we have more people on Medicaid rolls above the poverty line than below it. That's point number one. And then I'll give you another little interesting stat. Since 2012, because of Obamacare, the expansion of Medicaid went from being about the people, those traditional population I just named, and we have grown the Medicaid enrollment list 60% since 2012, yet the general population in America since 2012 has only grown 6%. We have an explosion of people on the Medicaid rolls that aren't the blind, that aren't the disabled, that aren't the pregnant, the nursing mother, the disabled. They're able-bodied individuals, able-bodied, and the FGA says that 6 out of 10, as they scrub 23 different states, looking at 20 million of these individuals out of the 30 million that are able-bodied, only 6 out of 10 of them didn't have any reportable earned income. That is an astounding statistic.
We spoke last time you were on the show. We talked about the food stamp epidemic that we have in the United States, how people who don't necessarily need to be on food stamps are on food stamps in record numbers. That said, it's counterbalanced by some otherwise encouraging news on the economic front. In March 2025, the U.S. economy added 228,000 jobs, far exceeding expectations. Strong growth was showing in transportation, retail, construction sectors. Businesses are accelerating hiring ahead of new tariffs. With this surge in job growth and rising wages in key sectors, how do you see this momentum influencing the GOP's push for tax cuts and spending reforms? Does it help, or is it neutralized by the sentiment around tariffs right now?
Look, the best anti-poverty program is a job, right? And so as we talk about social programming and just job growth and how that all is in tandem, something else that people need to look at, in '94, when you had Bill Clinton working with Republicans, Bill Clinton, the Democrat, working with Newt Gingrich, and many of the Contract with America, the just enthusiasm around reforms, what you saw was the poverty level going from the historic norms of 14% driving towards 10%. That also happened in the last Trump administration, where it went from the 14% average poverty rate down to the 10%. Now talk about the job element. Under the Biden administration, the last year or two of Biden's administration, the supermajority of all job growth was government jobs. And as you just referenced, under the Trump administration, the supermajority of all job growth is in the free market. And what made America flourish generations after generations until we got into this precipice in the last 20 and 30 and 40 years since the Great Society began by LBJ is what we've started seeing is we are headed towards a country where capitalism is being set aside for government program preference. And that is a long-term detriment to the fabric of this country, to work ethic, to the numbers in our workforce, and I'm so grateful for an administration that's reversing that.
Congressman, it's a pleasure to have you on. Before I let you go, as you know, 100 days of Trump is today. What do you think is the most important accomplishment as of right now under Donald Trump's second term?
Yeah, look, the guy is so busy you can't keep up with him. That's what's amazing about it. I often wonder, how does he handle his schedule? Because he's doing so many things. He's always, waking up with the newest news cycle of something else that's a great idea or something he's executed upon. And this has been truly an exciting 100 days. And I'm grateful for someone that is not just content to occupy a position, but is actually about doing the American people's business.
It's a very refreshing thing, I must say. Congressman, thank you very much for making the time, as always.
Thanks, God bless.
God bless. Stay tuned. We are joining another congressman nearby out of Texas, Congressman Brandon Gill. He sums up President Trump's first 100 days in a viral video recently. We'll take a look. We'll be right back.